Hi, I'm Paddy from CG Spectrum. We're here at Iloura with Glenn Melenhorst, the VFX supervisor. Glenn's worked on films such as the Ted franchise, SpongeBob, and most recently, Game of Thrones. So Glenn, tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you've done here at Iloura.
Well, I'm the visual effects supervisor, or one of the visual effects supervisors at Iloura. We are an effects company that work primarily in feature film. We have been around for probably 30 years. We did a lot of commercial work prior to that. Our first US feature was Charlotte's Web, which I think is about 13 years ago. So we've been doing feature work primarily for the US market, but domestic stuff as well.
Would you mind running through the visual effects pipeline and what each department worked on in Game of Thrones?
For Battle of the Bastards, we were asked to do a lot of animation of varying complexity. We did a lot of stuff that was very close to the camera. We did a lot of stuff for the larger crowd scenes. So we had a lot of work in trying to build an asset library that we could use. First thing we did was we gathered a lot of visual reference of horses because they're the thing you can't mocap easily. Human beings we can mocap in-house. There was some mocap available of horses galloping and cantering that you could buy by the second. I think we purchased a little bit of that, but not a lot of that suited our purposes. So we did a lot of research into, like I said, steeplechase accidents, things like that. And we pretty much copied as much of that action to be as faithful to the dynamic of horse movement as we could. We do have an in-house mocap system. It's a pretty low-tech one called IPI Soft, which is basically PlayStation cameras, and it's a markerless system. So we've got a room set aside with these mounted cameras, and our animators can go down at any time and grab a bit of footage and either use it purely as reference because it records the video from those angles, or we could grab the data from that, which then required some cleanup after solving. So whilst we couldn't do the riding stuff, we could certainly do the idle on the horseback kind of actions, as well as all the hand-to-hand combat. In terms of the assets, we had to start about two months before we actually started blocking our shots, just building the assets. We had two main armies facing off. We had the Boltons versus the Wildlings, but inside of those two armies, 3,000 strong on either side kind of armies, there were all these different factions that had aligned for the battle. So each one of them had different, armour, but also flags and saddlery and bridles and all the other kind of bits and pieces, weaponry. Everything was unique to those two armies. Because the series has been going for 6 years, they did have a lot of that reference of those types of armour already, built as physical props. So we got a lot of photography done of those assets, and then we created them in 3D. And also, not only did we have to build every single little piece, we had to build them in various stages of damage as the battle progressed, with more mud or more blood splattered on them, as well as different levels of detail, so that we could use those same assets for our massive simulations where it was impractical to use those high-res meshes. In terms of the effects, there were a lot of horse hooves hitting dirt or mud or snow or those sorts of things. So we built a system in Houdini to take the animators' action as well as the scene data that our tracking department had generated, and wherever a horse hoof hit the ground, we generated an automated system to kick dirt or mud or whatever we needed off the horse hooves, which then we could art direct as needed. We also did a lot of blood splatters. Actually, the simulation part of the effects pipeline was quite grueling. We had all the cloth simulation for every single rider, all the cloth simulation for every horse's mane, tail. I mean, they were hair sims, but they had saddlery and blankets and all reins, all those things were simulated. So over and above all that, there was just, every time there was an animation change, everything got re-simulated. And a lot of the hair and manes and tail simulation was very iterative because those horses were doing such extreme actions and the hair would go crazy. We'd have to keep sort of re-simming till we got something useful. The Battle of Bastards compositing, which is essentially assembling all the 3D components and the live action components and merging them together into one cohesive image. It was very challenging because nothing was terribly blue screen, so we had a lot of rotoscoping, a lot of cutting out every element. We had a lot of very complicated, many-layered 3D renders because we had so many thousands of participants and so we leveraged a type of compositing called deep compositing, which means when you render a 3D scene, you actually render the depth information in as well. So when you bring that in, it's like having a 2D image, but depth associated with it. So we could take a piece of smoke and drop it on a card somewhere in the middle, and it would be in between two horses, which is it's got a lot of overheads in terms of the size of the files and everything, but it was mandatory for a show like this that had so much going on. So the compositors took the background plate, the cleaned up plate with all the camera crew and everything removed from it, our 3D rendered elements, which isn't just a render, it's usually 50 or 60 individual component layers that go together to make that one rendered image, and then it was all interleaved and colour balanced and matched in so that it became seamless.
Glenn, thanks so much for having us. It's been amazing chatting to you, and good luck with everything in the future with Iloura. Make sure you follow us on Facebook and YouTube for more interviews like the one you've just watched.